It's an exciting time here in the old world because we have had an article telling us that yes, in fact, the rumoured preview dates are going to be true. We've got a preview this week for what's coming for pre-order next weekend, which means on the 5th of July, we're going to be seeing the Grand Cathay on shelves and also the new matched play book. The article is right, bells do ring and horns do blow, for it is a momentous occasion. Indeed, we are getting the first new army for Warhammer Fantasy, or, Warhammer the Old World, in over 20 years, I believe. I believe Ogre Kingdoms being the last one in the early 2000s, not sure on the exact date, maybe 2003, 2004. So, really exciting that we've got a whole new faction, fully supported, great stuff there. A little bit of fluff here, as you can see, long secluded within the distant realm, which is how they're justifying adding a new faction to a rule set and setting, which is actually 300 years in the past. So not 100% sure how that's meant to be shoehorned into the future, but don't worry about it, don't think about it, because the new models are fantastic. We've got a new first wave of miniatures, so they are splitting this into two waves, as they want to do with these. Beastmen, I think, were the only ones that didn't have two waves, and that was because they missed their release window initially. And we've got a packed Arcane Journal, and then alongside some other stuff as well. Coming down, we've got the new book for the Arcane Journal Armies of Grand Cathay. Interesting that they've called it an Arcane Journal. I don't have an issue with this. It does mean that it fits into their normal sort of release pattern, release cycle. They're doing a 48-page book, which is significantly shorter than the old Warhammer Army books that we used to get. But that's not what we've been seeing this edition, so I'm not, upset about this at all. For the essential companion to the new Grand Cathay faction, look no further. It has a new background, great stuff, lore and rules for the Storm Dragon's faithful warriors, giving you everything you need to start using the newest army on the battlefield, from unit profiles and upgrades to 18 new magic items and new spell laws. Laws plural. I think that's really interesting. Now, if we look at the Total War games, they have a yin and yang mechanic, so maybe that's the direction they go down. But excited to see two different spell laws. I think that's going to be really interesting. Also interesting to see which spell laws they're able to cast, if they're tied to just the ones in this book, or if they're able to access, obviously, battle magic. Very good. Although this is coming alongside the match play guide, which is then going to be coming alongside an FAQ. So maybe some things get shaken up there. Who can say? They do say here that it will be available to order in a softback edition, and obviously they'll do the online EPUB as well. I'm a little bit surprised, I think, that they haven't gone for doing some sort of collector's edition release. Obviously, Warhammer is an expensive hobby, and I'm not saying that we should have things that cost more money in general, but I'm not necessarily against giving people the opportunity to buy more expensive, like, collector's versions of items, which, great for the company. Great for the people who want to collect them if they do go for that, and then theoretically means that there's less price increases for the rest of us. But yeah, just feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity. Not to dwell, because we are getting plenty of stuff. Starting off with the Battalion. Now, I do have a quibble with this Battalion, and the quibble is FOMO. The launch of Old World was huge. Loads of people came over from various different games. We had people returning from Age of Sigmar and Warhammer 40,000, obviously. We had new players coming from those games. We had people coming from various bits and pieces. People who had started playing when Fantasy was dead, whether they'd picked up Warhammer Army Project or 9th edition. We had a huge swing of people coming in. I think Cathay is going to be equally large for Warhammer Fantasy as the launch of Old World. I genuinely mean that. I think we're going to get so many people. I am in a team, 6++, which is almost entirely 40k players. A couple of them, dabble with the Old World. Obviously, Lewis does. But I think this Grand Cathay launch is going to get probably a third of them buying Old World models when, they never had a desire to do so previously. This is going to be absolutely huge. We're going to see a huge uptick of people, and I really hope that they have printed enough stock, or they've, made enough stock. Now that's where my quibble comes in. So we'll get into what the box contains, and it says this box will be available while stocks last. That is a problem, because we know that they're struggling to fulfill all the orders, and maybe that's why they've done this, so they can say, oh no, we haven't run out of stock, we just ran out of the amount that we made, and we were always only going to make a limited amount of stock for this product. I'd like to see this as something that you can get into. The prices for Old World we've seen have been pretty reasonable, but that's mostly, I think, because it's all of the old stuff. When you look at the new models, They've jumped straight to newer price points, as far as I can tell. So when we're looking at this, we're probably going to see like a box of 30 Jade Warriors. That's probably going to be comparable to the sort of price you'd expect to pay for a 40k kit or an Age of Sigmar kit, one of the new kits that they've put out. So I'd like to see the ability to buy an efficient way to get into the army with the battalion, which I'm assuming, but I do not know. I'm assuming it's at a similar price point to the other ones, which is, I think, 110, 120. I haven't actually bought one of the battalions in quite a while. But I'm hoping that this stays as an easy way to get into the faction. Now, there may be reasons that they're not able to do that internally, given that this is this is a big percentage of all of the kits that are going to exist. But I am disappointed that this is theoretically a limited time box. So there is obviously business reasons to do limited time, whether this just gets around the disappointment for selling out and then being able to restock. A lot of people have had issues with, I think Pegasus Knights were a big one that across the sea people have been struggling to pick up in various places. But yeah, I'd like to see this brought back. Maybe this is just a case of they're going to do an initial run, and then once they've had a chance to replenish stocks, they bring it back as a full-time launch. That would be great. We'll see. And as it says, rules for all the above units can be found in the Arcane Journal book as well, that they'll be selling with this. So, what do we get in the box, and do I think it's any good? I think, first of all, the models look fantastic. These look absolutely incredible, and I'm so jazzed. I probably will be picking up one of these boxes. And you know what? Partially because of the FOMO. In my case, it's more, I probably want to make content about Cathay. Whether I end up wanting to play them on the tabletop or use them as a painting project, I think that would be something that's fun and people will want to see. But I think a lot of people are going to pick one of these up early because they might not have the chance to do so later. So what do you get? 30 Jade Warriors with hand weapons and shields or halberds, with 2 units of 15 or 3 units of 10, all full command. Great, I love that. I love that we're getting a huge amount of command in there. Just more flexibility is good. As you can see in here, there's a couple of different options for the command. A couple of different head options on the unit champions here as well. The drum that he's playing does seem to be the same, but that's okay. I'm less bothered about variety on the musical instrument. I can live with that if the banners, the big sort of centerpiece model is different. At least I think it's different. I hope they haven't just freehanded something different on there. Maybe I'm wrong and my aged eyes are failing me. But anyway, plenty of command options in there. 10 Jade Lancers, powerful shot cavalry, equipped with hand weapon shields and lances. This is enough for 2 units of 5, or a single unit of 10 with full command for both. This is a shame. So having played quite a lot of heavy cavalry, I find that the number that I'm going to want is probably going to be 6, 12, 14, 18 or 21. And that's basically, I'm going to want them in multiples of 6 or 7. If you listen to those numbers, there is not a single box purchase that makes that efficient. Worst case scenario, if I want 3 units of 7, I would have to buy 3 boxes and have 9 models left over. Now, there's always conversion opportunities. You can put your characters on horses and, various bits and pieces there. But it is a little bit of a shame. I don't feel like this is a malicious choice. This is more just a case of the old kits were often made in multiples of 4, which is how you ended up with 12s or 16s. And that was to do with sprue limitations, so it's, it is what it is. And they've moved to now boxes being 5 or 10 models, just round numbers. Not a malicious choice at all. It is just a little bit of a shame in terms of the reality of putting them on the tabletop. Having that extra model or 2 is quite nice. So I feel like if you and your friends want to play Cathay and the heavy cavalry ends up being good, maybe just split that 2nd or 3rd box and all of you can have as many models or as few models as you desire. That might be the way to get around it. But by the by, still lovely models, and 10 of them here, not bad. It's enough for 2 units of 5, theoretically. 2 Grand Cannons, which can alternatively be built as Fire Rain rocket batteries, with 4 crew members, including a hulking Ogre artillery crew, who can be taken as an upgrade for both units. Yes, you heard that right, the new army also has models from the last new army. If you are an Ogre fan, here's 2 new Ogres for you. I don't think these necessarily would be super useful. Actually, you know what, looking at them, that's a great man-eater musician, and then, theoretically, the model up on the top one is just, I guess, a butcher conversion? Cool Ogres. There's your clickbait. New Ogre models for Warhammer the Old World. Yeah, great stuff. I love these models. The sort of snub nose, I think, makes them look very different to the great cannons that we've got in this game already, and I quite like that. Rules-wise, these could go anywhere from dwarf cannons to the Exiles bombardiers, bombard cannons, sorry. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what the rules on these are going to be like. But, yeah, fantastic models, love them. And hopefully the Fire Rain rocket battery is better than the Hellblaster rocket battery. I don't think it will be. I think it's a limitation with how templates work in this edition. I expect this to be the lesser of the two options. However, if it's good, artillery are us, and obviously less options for this army than you might see for the new ones. 404 transfers for use on Jade Warriors and Jade Lancers. Hell yeah. Again, I'm not a huge transfer fan. People are, worst case scenario, stick this on eBay, make back, 8-10 quid on your box purchase there, recoup a little bit of the savings. So what are we thinking about this? Well, obviously, coming with Lancers here, this is just fantastic. This is what you want your heavy cavalry to have. Hand weapons and shields and halberds. These are two options that I would have been pretty unexcited about, apart from the rumoured changes that are coming up. Now, we don't know if those are true, but hand weapon and shield infantry might become very tanky. So these look like they've got heavy armour on. So this would theoretically, if the parry save rumours are true, which would give you +1 to your save in combat with hand weapon shield, getting to a 3-up armor save is quite nice, and then halberds theoretically do more damage on the charge. Infantry don't necessarily charge all that often, but both of these options, while not super exciting right now, the second that the army comes out and the FAQ drops, I think might be pretty exciting. So we'll see how that comes around, but yeah, big fan of that. Jade Lancer's great, 2 cannons great, and yeah, as always, no characters in there, but that's fine because there are some very specific characters that I think you're going to want. Moving on to those specific characters, we've got the Shungan Lord, or Shugenin. I've definitely mispronounced that. Someone in the comments let me know how to say it, and I'll get it wrong next time anyway. On a Great Spirit Longmer. So this is interesting, because I didn't realise it was going to be a multi-part kit. So you can start off, we've got the greatest generals in Grand Cathay ride into battle on top Great Spirit Longmer, powerful and intelligent creatures, possessed of great strength and the ability to fly. That's not what we want to know. What we want to know is this a Royal Pegasus or is this a Griffin? What is the equivalent? Does it have 360 charging? That's the most exciting thing to know. So the powerful dragon-blooded wizards favour a safe-ish space from which to cast their incantations, while more martial-minded prefer to plunge into the thick of combat. I hadn't realised that this was going to be a melee kit and a wizard kit, and that's very cool. Obviously, bringing out a new faction, you are kind of limited on the amount of sprues that you're able to get through production, which is fair and reasonable. I am looking forwards to Wave 2 in 2027, or whenever we get the next, edition, next book. But yeah, I love that. You've got a really flavourful character here, and you can run it in 2 ways. 2 different heads, 2 different, I think it was 2 heads for the dragon, 2 heads for the lord as well. Yep. And then 2 options for the left and right arms. So that gives us a reasonable amount of variability here. So you could run 3 or 4 of these depending on points and not feel like you've got the same model. 2 different heads. Yeah, so you'd have to mix and match a little bit. But yeah, this is cool. I really like this model. I don't love the paint scheme that they've gone for. I think the green into the orange, it kind of just blends into the background. I'd like something that makes it pop a little bit, maybe the orange a little bit brighter, but that's absolutely fine. We can all paint it as we want when we all buy them, which I'm sure we will do. But yeah, really like this model, and I love that there's multiple options there. So hopefully it comes in at a reasonable price point. I'd expect to see it come in at the same price as the Bretonnian Royal Pegasus character, if you're wondering what sort of price we're expecting there. Gate Masters of the Celestial Cities. Now, this is a good kit with some concerns. I do like this infantry and mounted combo kit that they've released for a lot of armies, where one of them, there's a banner in there as well. And they're led by, Jade Warriors are led by experienced soldiers known as Gate Masters, survive for a full decade, which, if you think about this from a historical sense, professional soldiers, if your command are the only ones who are surviving a decade, that concerns me. It's maybe not a career that I'm going to go into. But anyway, they are veteran warriors with a particular knack for defensive battles and can exert their authority over friendly troops with practice siege. So they've definitely got rallying cry, I think, is the thing to read into this. I am curious to see how they buff the infantry. Infantry right now, not the most exciting thing to put on the table. So hopefully there's some really fun rules in there that they will buff up the models that they're with. Some sort of force multiplier. And I think that would work quite well with the way they've been fleshed out in the Total War games, where you've got synergy between units. And It's kind of hard to do synergy between units, I think, in Warhammer, although maybe they'll give it a try. But synergy between unit and character, that works very well. So I'm expecting these to be cheaper characters that don't necessarily have too much punch, but are force multipliers to some extent. Now, here's my concern. 2 multi-part plastic Gatemasters, good. 1 foot and mounted, great. Interchangeable arms that equip 1 with a BSB and 1 with a Celestial Blade and Shield, dealer's choice who gets what. I'd like to see more than 4 arms in the kit. If you look at like the Dwarf one or the Empire one, and yes, these are older kits from a different time, there's a lot of choice in there. And now I'm not expecting this army to be able to get, for example, great weapons. That doesn't feel like it's something that you'd expect to see equipped by this quite elegant army. A great weapon doesn't feel like it fits with the flavour. I would expect to see halberds. So, you know, maybe a halberd kit in there. Not that I'm super excited to put a halberd on my unit anyway, but I'd like to see something, just a little bit more variety. However, we get what we get, and hopefully this comes in at a reasonable price point. If not, I think we'll see a lot of people converting out of the 30 Jade Warriors that they get already. So we'll see how that pans out, especially if you get one of these. You might have a spare head that you can use for your characters. Who can say? The Sky Lantern. This thing is huge. I had no idea that it was going to be anywhere near this big. Look at the picture there. But also, I guess this is a magistrate or a strategist. Yeah, so this model comes with on a foot model. But yeah, so I think we saw these previewed earlier to be either like a special rare choice, but also as a mount for one of the characters as well, which I think is really fun. So huge model. Hopefully it's got a big, you know, stonking flight stand, one that isn't going to break immediately. But this is going to be a pain in the backside to transport. Incredible wonders of Cathayan ingenuity. Love that. Mobile gun platforms and command centers to scout enemies from high and direct troops in battle. So this is interesting. I want to see what they do. And again, this is the sort of synergy aspect. How would this work? You could use it as some sort of spotter, but there's not really much in the way of ranged for Cathay. I guess there's the artillery, but I'm not sure how spotting would work for a cannon. You get to re-roll the misfire dice. I guess that could work. But, oh, maybe that would work quite nicely with the fire rain rocket batteries. If there's some sort of increased level of reliability for those, if you've got the Sky Lantern, that would be interesting. But yeah, so they consist of a vast floating lantern in a Vermilion Warbird, held aloft by a caged Vermilion Warbird. Oh yeah, I see. There's the Warbird there. I guess that doesn't look to me like the thing that's holding it aloft, but I guess they're saying that it's a creature that's doing the hot air creation as opposed to science. So interesting angle to go down there. But yes, so we've got a magistrate or a strategist in the kit. Can be used on foot with the square base provided. You can give them iron hail guns, dragonfire bombs, or long-barreled crane guns. And the lantern itself can be equipped with a bomb rack. The kit comes with a 115-piece transfer sheet. This, to me, looks like the kit that has the most options. So hopefully it's special, so you can take, you know, depending on what the points are, you can fit 3 in. Whereas with rare choices, often you find that if it's above 200 or, well, I guess above 166 or whatever it ends up being, you can't fit 3 in just for points concerns. So cool, interesting. Hopefully these are worth taking because there's a limited amount of range choices in this list. So hopefully it's reflected in the fact that you can only have 1 or 2 balloons, I would assume, and the firepower of them is worth taking. We'll see how that works out. Also comes with a transfer sheet, which makes sense because there's a huge amount of just sort of big flat space that you probably want to put something on. And I am not freehanding on this balloon. I would not trust myself at all. Then we've got the Cathayan Sentinel. Now this is a beautiful kit. I really like this. I don't love the terracotta look that they've gone for here, or like this version of. I believe they previewed a green, like jade version. Maybe I'm making that. Maybe I dreamt it. But if they did, that's the version that I liked. And these are created by the Celestial Dragon's mastery over the elemental winds. Which is... sure. I'm not sure how that makes pottery, but we're not going to argue. Titanic earthen constructs built to defend the Empire from the most powerful of foes. Tower of Immortal and Demon alike, wiping out entire regiments with their great sweeps of the claves, and so give immense amounts of damage. Now, we can't read into what that means, because Warhammer community team are given stuff to write, or, you know, perspective to write from, but I don't know that they're necessarily always in tune with what the rules writers have done. So That's not to rag on them, it's just, I think it'd be impossible for them to keep up with everything, just in terms of the scope of things Games Workshop puts out. But theoretically, that is reassuring to see, because I was worried when I saw this model it would have a halberd. Halberds right now not super exciting, but maybe, yeah, given that they've called it a glaive and not a halberd, that is reassuring that it's not just going to be strength +1, AP -1, armor bane 1, which is great. Also, sweeps. If we can read into this, potentially there's going to be some sort of AoE attack and then single target attack. That would be cool. Whether or not this goes face-to-face with a dragon, probably not, but can it go face-to-face with maybe a gigantic spawner Nurgle? Potentially. That's, I think, the power level that I'd like to see these in, and I'd like to see you be able to put 2 or 3 on the board. I think that would be really fun. You don't necessarily want the army to be overtaken by them, but I would like to see a few of them, I think. Soaking up immense amounts of damage. We will see. Games Workshop is very poor at determining what great amounts of damage are, I find. So things that they think are tanky may end up falling over very quickly, but I hope that's not the case. I'd like to see this something like 6 wounds with toughness 6, 4 up armor save and a 5 up regen. That would be a good amount of tankiness, and I'd be willing to pay for the, you know, the tankiness that I've got there. I'm not saying that I want that for ridiculously cheap. But yeah, beautiful kit. 2 poses, 2 head options, 2 neck options to change the direction it's facing, and 4 blade components to accessorize the weapon. So that's cool. So I guess we've got basically 2 different double-ended weapons, but you could mix and match and have like a big and a small or something like that. But yeah, big fan of those. Then we've got the reference cards and dice sets. I almost always would recommend that you don't buy those, and this is maybe the exception. They are pretty cheap for Games Workshop standards. But you get 36 quick reference cards covering your magic weapons, magic armor, talismans, magic standard, enchanted items, arcane items, yeah, sure. Elemental winds. What are elemental winds? That's a sneaky little teaser that we've got there. Are those... Oh, we've got the laws. Law of Yang, Law of Lin. I missed that the first time around. So we've got the magic laws in there. Yin and Yang. Excellent stuff. Elemental winds. I'm assuming that's going to be something along the lines of Wood Elf Kindreds or the High Elf... my brain's gone blank. Basically, the extra upgrades you can get, you know, the Chaos gifts. I wonder if it's that sort of, here's an extra 50 points that you can spend, here's a table, you can have up to 50 points, you can't replace them. The classic sort of setting that we've seen for a lot of those. Faction Special Rules, sure. And then the Cathay Armory as well. Then you can also get the dice... These are fine. I know it's not the style that they make. I'd actually quite like to see them with more squared off corners, similar to this logo symbol here in the center. I think that would just make them stand out and make them an interesting product. It would make them worse to roll and just a worse product in terms of use, but it would be cool. Because right now I'm looking at that and going, I don't really want some green dice that have, an Asian Chinese dragon printed on there. That's not something that I need to spend 20-30 quid on, whatever it is that they price at. But yeah, interesting stuff. Elemental winds, love that. And then the 2 laws there, cool. But really exciting stuff. Obviously we are now only a few days out from Cathay Week. It depends when I can get my hands on the rules, but there will be content coming no later than a week from today. It'll be sooner than a week from today, in fact. So really looking forwards to digging into the new faction and seeing what we can do with them. Finally, we've got the Warhammer the Old World Matched Play Guide. This is mostly for, when they say match play, they mean it for tournament play or for like structured play, where if you go to, you know, your local shop for a pickup game, match play is sort of the default expectation. This is not something that you have to play. If you are a narrative player and you're worried that this is going to ruin your games, this is optional. You can not use it. Not everything has to be for everyone. This is going to be great for people who play tournaments. If you only play 3 games a year with your friends, you don't need this necessarily, and the rules will be available online. So don't rush out to buy this if it's not something that you're going to use, and you'll be able to find the rules online sooner rather than later, I would assume anyway. But what do we get? So there's a wealth of guidance on running match play tournaments and events, so good to have some support there for TOs, tournament organisers. 48 pages, so just the classic 48-page small books that they've been printing. I quite like that size, honestly. You get much heftier books in the other games, and then you end up carrying hefty books around. So I'm not I'm not upset that we've got the smaller books and also the smaller price point that comes with those. So 6 unique scenarios, as well as introducing challenging and thematic secondary objectives to enhance your games. I've talked about this already. I'm a little concerned about what secondary objectives are, but we will find out sooner rather than later. Again, not only will there be Cathay Week, there will be at least one video breaking down the match play guide, maybe two depending on what the content is. If there's, if the secondary objectives are a big shake-up, there'll probably be a specific video on those, but we will see. But yeah, really exciting stuff. And are you going to be picking up the new Cathay box? Because if you are, and I probably should have mentioned this at the time, the best way to do so, and the best way to support your local, gaming areas, talk to your local friendly local gaming store. If you order from, a local store and you play there every Sunday or whatever, just say to them, look, I'm interested in getting one of these. Would you be able to reserve one for me? Do you know if you're going to be getting stock? That saves you from having to wait in a queue from sort of 9 AM on Saturday, which is inherently a little bit risky, because if it's as popular as I think it's going to be, it will sell out. And I think if it does sell out, you're not going to be able to get hold of the Battalion, which would be a real shame. So right now, just looking at a couple of characters, a couple of special or rare choices, and then the Battalion there to bulk you out. But that is most of the units. We are still waiting for the actual special character drop as well, and then all of these as individual boxes. But that will be, I'm sure, sooner rather than later. Thank you for watching. Thank you for getting to the end of the video. If you've reached this point and you haven't already, I would really appreciate a like, a comment, a subscription if you haven't done those things. It just helps me get seen by more people, boost me up in the algorithm, all of the stuff that the YouTubers do like to say. If you would like to support me in my goal to become a full-time YouTuber, I would absolutely appreciate that. You can become a member below. There are various perks to those, name at the end of the videos, all that good stuff, but it also unlocks some VIP areas in Discord if you become a Longbeard or Ground Knight tier supporter. Those VIP sections are the only parts that are locked away in Discord. You don't have to be a member to join the Discord. I'd recommend that you should. We've got about 450, 500 people on there. It's a great place for discussion, a lot of fun. I do try and chime in as much as possible. And it's also where the Fix My List show lists are put, and also if you are one of the Ground Knight or Longbeard tier supporters, where you participate in choosing which list I play in the monthly Pick My List series.